Hello, this is an assessment of a Marshall and Rose piano. We're in somebody's house, my colleague Matthias and myself, and we've been asked to assess the piano to see what sort of work might improve it. So just going to make an assessment sheet because it helps us to remember everything really. So just making this assessment sheet, sometimes when we're assessing a piano we don't think about things, I've found, and so it's quite useful. For instance, in this case the client's not that tall, but it's useful to know the leg room and the pedal height, which is very, very low, 4 centimetres. If you look at the pedals here, they're as low as you can get, I think, without them actually touching the floor when you play them. But low pedals are useful if you want more leg room. You could always lift up the casters a little bit with the caster cups. We got ones that go up at 2.5 centimetres, so that's useful, but in this case it's not relevant. They're a bit wobbly slightly. I wonder if the back stays there. No, I don't think it is. So there should be a back stay there to just stop the pedals moving backwards when you push your foot down. It gives you a bit more stability, and that lodges in somewhere up here, I think just here. So it goes through from, sorry you can't see, from here up to here on the underside of the piano. Some makes like Blutner are very kind and they fix the backstay on here so you never lose it, but very often when pianos get moved the backstay gets lost. I'm going to try and look at this in the order of most important. So tuning pin tightness is obviously very important. So usually check a tuning pin this side and this side. We check the tuning pins, turning the string down and back up, and they are all tight, so that's good. Pitch is 437, so A is 437, so a little bit flat, but not terribly flat. Let's see if it's in tune with itself. Well, it needs tuning. The octaves are out, the unisons are out, and this area here, the tone isn't really carrying across the soundboard very well. But it's acceptable, I think. Obviously, this client in this case doesn't want to change the piano, so we can try and make the best we can from this piano, and it is very pleasant in many areas. Marshall and Rose are well-made pianos, so I'm expecting it to be well-made generally. There's one string being replaced here, but I don't think the strings are going to break. If we lubricate here, turn them down, back up again, we can get the piano to concert pitch, which we might as well do if we're fine-tuning it. We would normally always do that and then take it a couple of beats sharp as well, just so, because it will tend to drop. Looking inside the piano, don't expect to see anything wrong here. Having seen many Marshall and Roses, normally they're well made, but sometimes you get splits in bridge. It's worth having a look really. It's unlikely, and they couldn't hear anything wrong with the tone at the break point, so that's indicative. There's a mark on the soundboard here, you can see it there, but I don't think it's damaged particularly. There's no real splits, and as we've mentioned before, that just indicates drying out, doesn't necessarily affect the tone. We'll have a look underneath while we've got the camera thinking about the soundboard. Looking underneath the piano, there was a removal sticker there. Underneath here, apart from a few spider's webs, which you often expect, and no, the soundboard's in good condition, and well, we looked at the pedals and the fact that the backstay is missing, so that's something that needs doing. The casework on the piano is original mahogany, but the clients, I don't think, wanting it repolished, but obviously it can be, and would be very attractive if it was. The casework, as you can see around that side, it's obviously dried out. So maybe at some stage that's been in a light spot or window and dried out on that side. The top lid is also the same bit, dried out and scratched, so that could obviously be done, but it's not going to affect the playing of the piano in any way. The key tops are encouraging. Perfect ivory is a bit dirty, so we can probably buff them. In fact, they do look as though they need buffing. I'm just looking to see if there's much shine on them, and that will stop them attracting dirt. And you can see here the sideways play, which indicates the piano has been used a reasonable amount, so that could be taken up underneath the key, turning the cricket bat as we call them. The action's held in with this block here. I don't think I've seen a block like that on both sides, so it needs to be unscrewed. There we are, it's unscrewed now, and we'll be able to pull the action out. On some English pianos you get, I think on Challenge, and if I remember rightly, you get some screws along here holding it in, and I don't really think that's necessary, but some English grands have those. It has a normal roller action, which is encouraging. A lot of the small pianos have simplex actions, so that's better to have this. It has a proper lever on it, and I think I've shown a simplex action in another video earlier. That the hammers are moved sideways a bit and are touching each other. There was one here that was touching when we were trying to play it. Can't seem to locate that one. There we are. That one there is touching the one next to it, because that's the hinges, obviously, or the shanks either warp slightly or the hinges come loose here. Let's have a look and see if the hinge is loose. No, those hinges aren't loose, so it might just have been moved over a bit. And if you can see, the spacing of the hammers isn't that good, so they might be hitting 2 out of 3 strings. And there's quite a lot of wear. If we look there, we can see quite a lot of wear on the top of the hammer. They need refacing, not replacing, really. That will make it sound a lot nicer. There's a bit of spillage there, but I don't think that's affecting it. And the top hammers moves right over for some reason. I don't know if that's the screw, but we'll obviously put that back. So there's some work we can do straight away. So we'll make the assessment, see what other work the client might want doing, and try and do a bit of work while we're here as well. While the action's out, just looking to see if the hammers are tight at all, but they don't need lubricating and the pins don't need changing. They're not too tight. If I lift them up and nearly to 90 degrees and drop them, they all drop nicely, which means there's none of them too tight. And that's a slightly loose pin here, so that's slightly too loose. And 1 or 2 of them, not many of them, just like that one there. There's another one here, slightly loose. So that would be beneficial to repin, otherwise the end of the hammer tends to wear and it can make a noise if it's loose as well. Just check the key weighting. It's generally a bit heavy, and if we lift the keys up we see they don't go down, so the balance rail needs lubricating ideally. Obviously that's getting involved in a bit more work taking the action apart, so that takes time. At the bottom particularly, as we'll see, the key weighting is a little bit heavier, especially at the bottom. We've just noticed that this block here this is what's usually part of the cheek itself, because it has the slot there for the action to slot into. So obviously they've put that on instead, because that's normally part of the block. The cheek here is normally integral with that. I'm not quite sure why they've decided to do that. This music desk folds forward like older Steinways do, a lot of them anyway, and so it has got a broken. The screws come out there. It's a bit broken at the side there. One thing I should have picked up earlier is that the regulation really needs doing. So the set off here, it's setting off very, very early. Probably we've got it over 1 centimetre from the string there, and it should be 1-2 millimetres ideally. So that definitely, we should do C and C sharp here just to get those right and see how close we can get them. Doing things in the wrong order really. Should have measured the key dip, which is 10.5, which is acceptable, so that's probably how it was meant to be originally. And the hammer blow here, which we also need to measure, 52-53 millimetres, so that can come up, and that will make the touch much better if we then also regulate the set off. So on C and C sharp note 40 and 41, we've reset the hammer blow to about 47. It's quite hard to see on this tape measure. Obviously you have something to measure that goes between the hammer and the string normally, but just to try and illustrate that, I think we're pushing it down slightly there. That's the problem. No, that's it. Yes, difficult anyway, but that's 47. So I've disabled the set off. I also like to do C note 16 here, just to have one of the bass notes done as well. And it's a beautiful capstan here. I love this style of capstan because you can go in from any side much more easily. Lots of good design features on Marshall and Rose pianos. Beautiful design. I wish all manufacturers used this. We can now do the set off regulation. That's moving this button here, taking it up, and it went a long way actually, I think more than almost 3 turns. Now we disabled it, so if we look up here as we play the note, it's not setting off at all. So my colleague Matthias is going to hold the key down, turn the set off the other way until it does set off. So here we go. Still not setting off. Swatch it. That's setting off now. So it just came down. So that's just 1/2 quarter turn more just to be sure. And then we got the set off as close as we can with a safety margin. So there we are. So it gets much closer. If we compare that with the B, Here's the B and the C together. There's the B, there's the C, so it sets off an awful lot later. It means you can play much more sensitively. So Matthias is going to take the drop screw up, and we don't know how far to go yet. This is C and C sharp, so that was note 41 he's doing now. Then we'll do the one next to it. So if you watch the hammer go up, there we are. That's probably about right. Let's try the other one. This is this note, it's 40. And let's try doing the drop screw again. Yes, it's closer. Let's try that. Well, they're different, those two, so we'll just see which one is going to work. So there's note 1441 and there's note 39B. You can see the difference, hopefully. It's not very good with the camera. There we are. And that's where it's held, so it can be repeated. So that's much closer. The adjustment of the spring tension, it really wasn't too bad, so that's why I didn't mention it earlier. But if we let the back check come off as we lift the key slightly, and the hammer goes up, which means the spring tension is roughly right. That one's a bit less, so that needs regulating slightly, that one as well. So they do need regulating, but once you've got the hammer higher and also the drop screw, then we can do the spring tension. And last of all, the back check, which is perhaps a little bit low, but not too bad, so that would be adjusted by bending it forwards. Here's a summary of what we've been talking about. The piano 1927, we think, roughly, and very short, 5'9" long. It's a roller action, which is encouraging because very often there's simplex actions which aren't so good to regulate on these small pianos. So pitch raise and reface the hammer, so these are jobs that will help. We'll try and put them in priority order in terms of what will help the musician. Most musicians really are wanting the piano to feel good first, so definitely we've got things here like, I think the general regulation is very, very far out, so that will make a huge difference to it. Obviously tuning, pitch raising and tuning is important, and lubricating, well, all these works are important really. Buffing keys perhaps not so much. If you don't mind having to clean them regularly, then doesn't matter if you buff them or not. So I hope that's helpful. I'm just going to give an idea of the tone of the piano from just playing sustained really. So it's a pleasing tone. Marsh and Rose is a good make. They were taken over by Welmar later on, but at this stage it's a genuine original Marsh and Rose. That one's sticking, as you can see. I think it's the hammer touching the hammer next to it. So we're going to have to align hammers, certainly. That's one thing that is the first thing to do really. So we'll be doing that today and getting the piano working, and then hopefully we'll be asked to do the other work, which will greatly improve the piano. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that's helpful. Well, so perhaps we'll make a video when we finish the whole thing if you have time. I'm sorry you don't always have time to do follow-up videos, but it's just time really. So thank you very much. Hello, the work on this 1927 4'9" Marsh and Rose baby grand piano has now been completed. Just want to look at it. Just done the final checks. Came with my colleague earlier. I'm actually on my own now because we forgot something in the workshop. The case what we didn't do anything to at all, but we did replace the pedal rod, and also the right hand pedal was very greasy. We have had to degrease it and put some dry lubricant talc on it. You see that's the rod at the back there, which wasn't there, and consequently the pedals were moving. It's a bit disconcerting when you put your foot on the pedal and it moves backwards. So if you see there now, it's absolutely solid, which is much nicer really. The keys have been buffed. Just look at some of the other aspects that we've done too. We repaired the music desk on the left hand side here, and it was just broken. It's largely broken usually because as with older Steinways, there's a tendency people want to push it backwards because most music desks push backwards, but if you try and do that you break the hinge. It goes forwards when you want to close the piano, and then you slide it in like that. So some pianos are like that. Majority do fold backwards, but there are some pianos that you have to be careful not to push this back because it will break the hinges. Now the piano has been pitch raised. That's A440 normally. We leave it slightly sharp, between 442 and 443. That's because it tends to drop over a period of time, and I think that if it's left slightly sharp, you're not going to turn so many tuning pins. People don't want a flat piano. A slightly sharp 2 beat sharp is acceptable, and in fact some concerts, I used to tune concerts in the 80s where they wanted 444. The Steinway in the hall, we actually left it at 442 because we thought that we're not going to take it up and down all the time for different people. The couple of pins here that have been set, I've just left the marks on them so you can see. It's very often that one row is slightly loose, so I've had to set those pins. That's done with a pin setter. You basically, it's square, you hold the pin tight and then hit it on the top here gently. You don't want to bash it right the way in. The idea is to roughen the wood up rather than hit the pin all the way in. That one's been set before, I think, because I nearly had to go as far as possible on that one. I did actually break a string on pitch raising. It's this string here. Fortunately, it's not the one that you can see replaced. That was replaced before, but the one next to it, actually, I should have been warned that even though lubricating it, taking it down and back up, the metal was very brittle, and so I had to. I'm just going to turn the light on so you can see it better. There we are. Now, hopefully, you can see the new one. There's another one that's been replaced earlier on. I think that's actually galvanised wire there. That pin's been left a bit high. This one here. So it's funny that they're the right consecutive strings. You can see that I've left the becket out of it. The becket's the bit sticking out of the pin. That's just because I did drew a becket which broke. And I didn't want the second one to break, and I sacrificed a bit of tidiness there just because I wanted to make sure the becket wouldn't break again, and fortunately it didn't. And you can see I just wound the string off one pin as you can down to the bottom there. Just take it off the pin, take it round a bit further, and then you can use obviously it's going to be shorter on both pins, but just once round the pin is enough normally. If you're a tuner and got experience of this, then that'd be very interesting to know. But I think it's better than replacing the string. That's not likely to break any more than the others now that's been repaired. And if you replace it, you get a different tone sometimes, and sometimes it's hard to get the exact size of the string, so the hammer may not quite hit it at the same time as the others. And we talked about that with refacing. It's really important. So I'm just going to look at the summary on the worksheet to see if there's anything else I've missed out. I've got to mention that I've supplied this piano stool. We can do that one free actually, because it's very hard to sell those. It's a period stool and not really a brilliant match for the piano, but we couldn't find another free one, and it's the right height, whereas the one that the client was using is much higher. You could obviously take the legs off that, as she suggested, so not sure whether she wants me to leave the stool behind or not, but it is available anyway. But that's the right height for me, otherwise just a bit on the high side. So looking at the assessment sheet again, all those jobs we've done, realign hammers, that was the most important task in a way, and they're very close to each other. I had to shave off some of the hammers. Lubrication has brought down the weight. We've got an after here, so it was 65 plus there, 55 now, 65, 56, 62, 56. So not quite as even. Obviously we can carry on working on this piano. The problem with working on English pianos, if you ever want to resell them, unfortunately it doesn't add enough value, and we can't really take them on to restore. It's very sad, because they can be very good. Marshall & Rose is a very pleasant sounding piano and very well made. Lots of baby grands were made in England, well made. Challen made the most, I think, but we've come across others I've done videos of before. Broadwood, of course, made a few as well, or quite a few. So Marshall & Rose, they've taken over by Welmar or merged with them, and Welmar made some good baby grands too. The stool I mentioned, I wanted to bring that back. Pitch raise, well, that was successful. I broke a string. Doesn't normally happen, but I should have been warned by the string that I'd broken before. Pedals stay. I think that's everything. So I'm just going to play the piano so you can get an idea of what it sounds like now. Haven't done anything on the case. The client just really wanted it musically good. We certainly can repolish, and if we do, we lend a piano to use in the meantime. So that's a possibility. Though, as I say, unfortunately, if you try to resell the piano, it would be very difficult to get the money back that you spent on it. So that's a Marshall and Rose small grand piano made in England, a very respected maker piano, and it's been a pleasure to work on this piano to see how it can be transformed, or at least as much as we can, within a budget. There's other things we'd have liked to have done. I forgot to mention, I was thinking that it would have been nice to have changed the rollers or knuckles, but obviously more expense. And that was placed very evenly, and the touch was lightened slightly as well. So it's very pleasant. It's sort of piano, the touch is good, and that matters so much for me when I'm playing. I really want to continue to play a piano with good touch. The hammers were far too low. The touch was very unresponsive before, unfortunately. We've refaced the piano, which has made the tone even. Slightly brighter. I hope the client doesn't mind it being slightly brighter. We can obviously mellow it down. So thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in having a piano reconditioned, then we'll be very happy to try and help. Just write to us, info@robertspianos.com.